The rotor blades chopped the morning air like a buzzsaw over glassy water, that bright orange Coast Guard helicopter hovering right above my private dock, just about ready to touch down. Then out of nowhere it jerked hard left and shot back up into the sky like it had spotted a ghost. I'm standing on my porch, mug of coffee in hand, still in my slippers, totally confused when I spot something weird on the dock, a freshly nailed board slapped right where the emergency marker used to be. Big red letters screaming out, "No trespassing HOA property." My jaw just about hit the deck. I hadn't put that thing there and nobody'd asked my permission. Hell, my dock had been cleared as an emergency Coast Guard landing zone for over a decade. Then I spot her standing on the shoreline, waving all smug hammer in one hand, cup of herbal tea in the other, Karen from the HOA. Of course it was her. She mouths, "You're welcome," like she just solved world peace. She had no clue she'd just committed a federal offense, and honestly I was still half asleep, not believing any of it was even real. That morning had started just like any other, peaceful, a hint of dew on the grass. The lake so smooth you could see the sky in it, and me brewing a fresh pot of coffee, planning to knock out some remote work and maybe take the boat out before lunch. That dock wasn't just some backyard luxury for me. It was a necessity, not only for fishing or tying up the old pontoon, but because after a crazy flood years ago, FEMA and DHS had worked with a few of us private owners to officially designate landing zones for rescue boats and helicopters. I'd spent real money reinforcing the dock, installing steel grating, making sure it met every code, and even registering the GPS coordinates with Homeland Security. That dock was more than wood and bolts, it was a federal safety point. So you can imagine how my blood boiled seeing that sign. I stomped down the gravel path, boots crunching, half hoping maybe it was some dumb prank. Nope. As I got closer, I saw the laminated HOA logo stapled at the bottom with Karen's signature scrawled in Sharpie. Underneath it read, "Unauthorized dock activity subject to fines." For a split second, my brain didn't know whether to scream or laugh. That's when her high-pitched voice rings out behind me. I did what had to be done. You can't just let anyone use community land. I turn around and there she is, sun hat, clipboard, yoga pants, entitlement on parade. Karen had just been elected HOA president, mostly because she never shut up at meetings and bribed folks with lavender bushes. Since then, she'd banned porch swings longer than 5 feet, called someone's vintage bike rack a hazard, and now apparently decided my dock needed her royal approval. I tried to keep calm, told her, "Karen, this dock isn't HOA land, it's private, and more importantly, it's federally registered. You just interfered with an emergency system." She just scoffs. "Oh, please, you expect me to believe that little fishing plank is government property? What is James Bond gonna parachute in next?" It would have been funny if it wasn't so reckless. I pulled out the laminated Coast Guard sticker she'd ripped off, showed her the actual paperwork, even the memo I'd signed with emergency services. She rolls her eyes and says, "Looks photoshopped. Maybe use a better font next time." That's when I knew logic wasn't going to work. Karen wasn't interested in facts, she was obsessed with control. So I made the call. I stepped back inside and rang up Commander Nolan at the Coast Guard office. Told him about the sign, the aborted landing, the whole 9 yards. His voice went from casual to ice cold in a heartbeat. By mid-afternoon, 2 uniformed Coast Guard officers showed up at my place, radios in hand, faces set like stone. When we walked down to the dock, Karen was still out there now, lounging in a lawn chair like she owned the place. As soon as she spotted the uniforms, she tried to act innocent, greeting them with, "Gentlemen, glad you're here to help us keep the community safe." The taller officer didn't even blink, just asked, "Ma'am, did you post this sign?" Karen straightened up. "Yes, I'm the HOA president. This area isn't suitable for unsupervised public use." He hit her with the truth. "This dock is a federally designated emergency site. Your sign caused a Coast Guard chopper to abort landing during a scheduled exercise. That's a federal violation." Karen tried to laugh it off. "Well, nobody told me that. Shouldn't there be paperwork?" I handed him the same documentation she'd ignored. He nodded, snapped photos, radioed for backup. 10 minutes later, a Coast Guard patrol boat docked, another officer joined, and suddenly Karen was pacing, asking if she was being arrested, which, to be clear, nobody'd said. They didn't arrest her, not yet, but they did hand her a written warning and told her to remove the sign immediately. She refused. She actually said, "I'll have my lawyer cousin look at this." He knows municipal law. The officers didn't argue. They just said further interference triggers federal obstruction charges. You don't want Homeland Security involved. For once, Karen had nothing to say. They yanked down her sign, reattached the Coast Guard marker, and added a QR sticker linked to the Federal Registry. Karen fumed, speechless. As soon as they left, she stormed up to me and hissed, "You think this is over? I run this neighborhood. You'll regret crossing me." I just walked up the dock, double-checked the marker, and started thinking about setting up cameras, because if I knew Karen, this was just Act 1. And boy, was I right. The very next morning, a letter slid under my door, a special HOA notice with Karen's loopy signature at the bottom. She'd called an emergency board meeting to vote on unauthorized occupation and alteration of shared infrastructure. She'd actually called my private, federally recognized dock a community asset, lumping it in with the HOA's pool patio. The meeting was that same morning at 10 a.m., probably hoping I wouldn't make it. Joke's on her, I was ready. When I walked into the clubhouse, you could feel the tension. Half the board wouldn't make eye contact. A few residents looked confused, and Karen was up front next to a dry erase board labeled Community Dock Issues, listing bogus bullet points about erosion and dangerous unauthorized electrical work that didn't even exist. She gave a long-winded speech about safety, then unveiled a survey she claimed showed residents wanted the dock dismantled. All the signatures were from her book club friends, none dated. Time for my move. I stood up, thanked them for hearing me out even though nobody had, and laid out every document: the Coast Guard registration, the federal MOU, photos of the reinforcement work, and a signed letter from Commander Nolan. The room went silent. Karen crossed her arms and muttered, "Anyone can print fancy paper, doesn't make it law." So I handed out certified letters from the Coast Guard legal office. Obstructing the dock was a federal crime, period. Greg, one of the board members and a retired logistics officer, finally spoke up. "This is the real deal. We'd be fools to fight it." Karen's face was stone, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. That night, my security cameras caught two teenagers, one of them Karen's nephew, trying to spray paint over the Coast Guard marker. The other was messing with the bolts like they were trying to sabotage the structure. I flipped on the floodlights, scared them off, saved the footage, and called it in to Commander Nolan. That's when things got even more serious, he told me. "That's now a federal obstruction attempt. We're escalating." The next day, a Coast Guard legal liaison hand-delivered a cease and desist letter to Karen's house right in front of her neighbors. It covered her, the board, anyone connected to the HOA, no more touching the dock, no more games. Violation meant fines, criminal charges, and possible civil action. And just like that, the tide started to turn. People around the neighborhood, folks who'd always kept quiet, began to talk. Apparently, Karen had fined someone for flying a small American flag called a kid's lemonade stand, a commercial enterprise, and even threatened a veteran with eviction over his service dog. Her little circle of loyalists started shrinking. But Karen wasn't finished. She called another emergency meeting now, claiming the dock was an eyesore that should be reported for removal. She even printed out fake photos taken at weird angles to make it look old and unstable, though it had just passed inspection. This time, I brought back up two Coast Guard officers in full uniform. As soon as she started spinning her web of lies, one of them stood up and announced, "This dock meets all federal standards for emergency operations. End of discussion." Karen's voice, once booming, was suddenly just background noise. The power she'd held through intimidation was breaking, but I knew she wasn't done. 3 days of silence passed intense, not peaceful. Just that electric feeling before a storm. Then it happened. Saturday morning, thick smoke rose from the far side of the lake. A tourist boat carrying a family caught fire. Something about a barbecue tipping over a gas canister, you name it. The only safe place for rescue was my dock. I rushed outside, unlocked the barrier, grabbed the emergency beacon. Set it up just in time to see Karen and her loyalists hosting a community block party at the dock's entrance, complete with tents, banners, and music. She waved at me like it was all innocent, then shouted, "It's Family Safety Day, land. Your little boat's somewhere else." I didn't bother arguing. I called in the obstruction on the Coast Guard's emergency channel. Seconds later, a patrol boat with fire rescue plowed across the lake. Officers tore down the tents, clipped balloons, told Karen, "Ma'am, you're interfering with a federal rescue operation. Step aside or be detained." She actually backed off, speechless. Rescue crews got the family to safety. My cameras caught everything: her face, her banners, her arguing with officers. That night, a black SUV with government plates pulled into her driveway. An officer served her a legal citation for obstruction, not just a warning, a full federal charge with a pending court date. Word spread like wildfire. Even people who'd defended her before turned on her. She posted rants online, blaming me, blaming the Coast Guard, blaming fake federal connections. The screenshots got shared, then mocked, then deleted. Commander Nolan called to thank me for cooperating, told me Karen's name was now on the Homeland Security civilian interference list and the dock would get upgraded security. The next HOA meeting was a circus. Karen tried to play victim, parading a paralegal friend around as her legal advisor, but he couldn't answer basic questions. Greg stood up and said, "I've seen better scams and basic training. You're done." Within a week, the board called a vote to remove Karen. People packed the clubhouse standing room only. Karen tried to give a big speech about vision and community. Greg calmly read out every one of her violations: the illegal sign, the obstruction, the lies, the intimidation. Then, the vote: 34 hands up for her removal, 1 hand down, hers. Karen grabbed her clipboard, muttered about ungrateful people, and walked out. Afterward, the neighborhood started to breathe again. People smiled, walked their dogs. Someone hung a sign near the lake that said "Community over Control." Karen retreated, blinds drawn, yard untended, reduced to pacing the edge of my lawn with her yoga friends in reflective vests, claiming to launch a neighborhood preservation committee with fake fines and made-up rules. It became a running joke. A local reporter ran a story titled, "HOA Queen Launches Fake Agency Targets Coast Guard Dock." Karen tried to spin it, but even her closest friends walked away. The HOA organized Coast Guard Appreciation Day. Officers showed up, handed out emergency kits, answered questions, took photos with kids. The dock that once divided the neighborhood brought everyone together. Karen watched from behind her blinds, silent, while the Coast Guard officially recognized my dock as a federal partnership site. They installed a new plaque with the Homeland Security seal, "Permanent, Legal, Untouchable." I'd love to say that was the end of it, but honestly, people like Karen never quit. They just find new ways to stay busy. She still lives there, walks her dog in silence, sometimes glares at the dock. But the difference is the spell's broken. The community knows what matters now. The dock stands, the sign shines, and if there's ever another emergency, everyone knows exactly where to send help, because in the end, one person's obsession with control can't hold back the truth or a community willing to fight for what's right. So let me ask you, was I wrong for standing my ground? Would you have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts below. I'm dying to see where y'all land on what justice and community really mean.